Hey y'all, we are episode 6 today, slowly making our way to episode 8. Episode 8 is going to be a milestone for Black Girls Guide to True Crime because we will have the opportunity to be spotlighted in the One Black Podcast a Day newsletter. So I'm looking forward to that. And when y'all get a chance, go check them out. One Black Podcast a Day highlights and uplifts Black voices in podcasting. So let's support them because they connect listeners like you to creators like me. Today's episode is really special because it was a case requested by my husband. Shout out to my boo. And it's so funny that he recommended that I look into this case because he knows I took on this podcast project and it's him being supportive in his own way. This story is so true to him because it involves athletics. My husband is not a true crime head at all, but he can tell you any sports facts 10 years before he was born. And I'm not exaggerating. He is a font of sports knowledge. So, to test my husband's sports knowledge, I'm asking listeners to send any challenging sports questions to our email. That's info@blackgirlstruecrime.com. And next week on episode 7, I will quiz my husband at the beginning of the show. With that said, let's get into it today. Today's case we're going to be reviewing is the case of ex-Alabama basketball player Darius Miles. He is actually a co-defendant to Michael Lynn Davis, who was convicted in May of this year for capital murder. Darius is pending trial on December 1st, later this year. This case is close to home for me, literally and figuratively. I grew up not too far from Tuscaloosa. I have a couple of cousins who went to UA, so I'm familiar with the campus culture. It's a college town, and the people are passionate about sports teams. So let's set the scene. You have a couple guys from the Alabama basketball team. That's Darius Miles, Brandon Miller, who is now playing in NBA, and Jaden Bradley. And then you have a childhood friend of Darius Miles named Michael Lynn Davis from Maryland, hitting the town for a night out after a big Alabama win against LSU. And there tends to be confusion when this story is told because there's so many people and moving pieces with kind of similar sounding names. So I'm going to use first names moving forward to try to eliminate the confusion. So there's a lot of team spirit and a lot of energy on the strip. People are celebrating and intoxicated. The 4 guys meet up at the 1225 Sports Bar, and Brandon, who is driving, realizes the line is too long and opts to go get food instead. And I just want to say, when I read this, I realized Brandon Miller is my spirit animal because that particular action that he took to go get some wings instead of waiting in the line really just speaks to me as a person. Totally something I would do. Leave my friends and just sit by myself and eat instead of waiting in a line because, for what? So Brandon just lets his teammates know he's going to get food and for them to let him know when they're ready to be picked up. At some point during the celebrations, Darius and his crew cross paths at the 1225 bar with Cedric Johnson and Jamea Harris. It's unclear whether or not that's inside or outside standing in line, but they don't have an interaction with them in that moment. When they're getting ready to leave, Darius lets Brandon know he's ready to be picked up, and Brandon responds that he's going to be a minute at around 1 a.m. on January 15th, 2023. Sometime between then and the shooting, Darius, Michael, and Jaden are walking towards Jaden's car, and Michael is being very playful. Perhaps he's a little intoxicated and feeling good, and he starts dancing in front of a drugstore. Cedric, who's in a black Jeep with Jamea and her cousin, rolls down the window and has a brief verbal exchange with Michael. And it gets heated enough where Michael challenges him to a fist fight. And Darius and Jaden have to pull Michael away from the Jeep. Michael also reports he saw Cedric reach for a gun at that time from the passenger side. 40 minutes later, Brandon lets him know that he's on his way, at which time Darius responds, "I need a joint. Real life just got to faking. Pull up to 1225. Brandon pulls up shortly after, and Michael and Darius have a brief conversation that is captured on Brandon's dash cam after they approach the car and get the gun. Surveillance footage played in court shows Michael hiding behind a building as the Jeep pulls up behind Brandon Miller. Now, Michael then runs around the back of the Jeep to the driver's side window with a ski mask and shots were fired. It's not clear in the footage who fired first, but Michael hit the ground after the first 2 shots rang out and proceeds to fire into the vehicle. But then, obviously, the irreversible happens when 23-year-old Jamea is shot and killed. And melee ensues. Bystanders are running, cars are speeding off, almost hitting each other. Brandon's car is hit with bullets and sideswipes the Jeep as over 11 shots rain down. The Jeep with Jamea speeds towards the Walk of Champions on campus where they make contact with a UAPD officer for help, but Jamea is already dead at this point, and we see Brandon's car going in the other direction. After all this happens, Darius calls for help because Michael is shot, and they are claiming he's too intoxicated to know what happened to the 911 dispatch. They just know he's injured from gunshot wounds. At that point, we don't know if they're aware that someone has died. Darius and Michael are arrested that same day because there's just a ton of surveillance footage and witnesses in this case. There are a lot more people involved that aren't mentioned because they were either indirectly related or not charged. So I don't know what Darius's and Michael's end game was when they were claiming to not know how Michael got shot, but their involvement was known from the beginning. And this is considered high profile in places like T-Town because it involves the athletes of a huge D1 basketball program. Darius and Brandon are ball players. It's like when Tristan Thompson was out in public cheating on Khloe Kardashian. Dude acting like he not the only 6'9" Ninjago in the club. Like, y'all are going to be seen. Y'all are known faces, almost celebrity-like in that area. Brandon Miller was a 5-star recruit and one of the top players nationally in the 2022 class. So they're highly recognizable. And because of that, there was so much misinformation here, and the narrative really was sensationalized. When my husband first presented this case to me, what he told me, and the narrative being told online, was that Jamea was shot because she rejected advances. And I remember thinking to myself, ain't no way in hell. There was an exchange at some point based on testimony where Cedric said, "They good, bro," implying that Michael was trying to push up on his girl. And Michael responds by saying, "I don't want your girl, bro." And maybe in that moment he was showing out for the girls or trying to get their attention. All pretty black girls know what this looks like and knows this culture, whether you single, with a guy, or with a group of friends. But everything that happened after that was black social politics. It was male ego versus male ego, and it escalated. And you thinking surely they didn't get mad at each other to the point of gun violence, but that's exactly what seems to have happened. And even though everything happened so fast, within a matter of 11 minutes, neither party decided to leave the area. They were circling on surveillance video and canvassing, almost like looking for each other, both of the crews. And it just resulted in a tragedy. There was also a distorted narrative of Brandon Miller's involvement. I couldn't wrap my head around how Darius was being charged with capital murder for giving Michael the gun, but Brandon wasn't charged for giving Darius the gun. So when you commit a crime or are accused of committing a crime, it's not always whether or not you pull the trigger. It comes down to motive and intent. It's analyzed to a fine level of your involvement. Brandon Miller claimed he received a text message regarding the gun from Darius after he was already on the way. I do that all the time. I will drive all the way from one location to another and not look at my phone until I arrive. Dashcam footage was also investigated by authorities, which also cleared Brandon in terms of his knowledge. And I personally found Brandon Miller to be truthful in his interviews. His story was the only story that was consistent with the video and audio evidence during initial interviews. After this incident, Brandon was booed at basketball games, and fans would chant for him to be locked up. So this story has followed him, even though he has never been charged. But there were a lot of things that pointed to Darius as being more knowledgeable about what was going on. And maybe you thought your friend was just going to try to scare the victims and not kill someone, but you gave him a loaded gun. So him shooting and killing someone was not out of the realm of possibility. And you knew that, at least. Not only that, but Michael fired into a vehicle. Your target has nowhere to go. Like, somebody's going to get hit. They were just on knucklehead time. So let's talk about guilty by association and surrounding yourself with knuckleheads, because I have teenagers and they may be listening. They hear this from me and their father all the time. So this is a cautionary tale. Brandon Miller is lucky because it could have been something as simple as responding back okay to Darius without really reading the message, which they could have argued made him more culpable for this crime. You cannot surround yourself with people who don't have anything to lose. And Brandon and Darius definitely had something to lose. And I don't judge. I can't speak to Michael and whether or not he had something to lose, but his freedom is something to lose. I don't know his family life or his upbringing or how it informed his actions. And this is on both sides. We keep mentioning about the company that Darius and Brandon keeps, but the same could be said regarding Jamea and her cousin. You have to recognize a situation that's not for you. As soon as you realize you're in a vehicle with a hothead and a revolver, you got to go home too. So we'll learn more on December 1st when Darius goes on trial. The jury found Michael guilty in May of this year. He tried to claim self-defense, which may have been more effective if he hadn't killed Jamea, because you're claiming self-defense, but you didn't kill the person you were defending yourself from. You killed the passenger. Additionally, Michael could have easily told law enforcement he got the gun for himself to protect Darius and his future, but he didn't. He told police he got the gun from him, and he gave the gun back to him. And also, there was another teammate who they gave the gun to hide, and that player's mom told police where to find the gun. She was not trying to have her kid jammed up because of some knuckleheads. So another lesson I teach my kids, stay out of situations where street code comes in. Nobody is loyal when facing 25 to life, and there is no honor amongst thieves. So food for thought for our young listeners. Recognize who belongs in your inner circle and who does not. That's all we have for today, folks. I'm Lauren, and I'm signing off.